Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the seminar on cultural heritage and sustainability on the last day of ROC Open Knowledge Week. My name is Mafalda Nunes, and I'm a researcher at the Institute of Social Sciences of the University of Lisbon. So during this seminar, we'll be sharing experiences and discussing different practices and challenges of sustainability in relation to cultural heritage-led regeneration. And our panel includes representatives from different initiatives in Lisbon, Bologna, Vilnius, and Turin. And I believe it will certainly stimulate very diverse and interesting perspectives about this seminar's topic. Unfortunately, Liverpool and Vilnius had some technical issues, so they will not be able to participate live in this seminar. But Vilnius will be able to answer questions in case there are some through the chat. So without further delays, I would like to introduce first a introductory video by Roberto Falango, who is a researcher at the Institute of Social Sciences of the University of Lisbon. And he's also the coordinator of this panel. And in this video, he will talk about the work developed by the research team in the ROC project in Lisbon, and also its connection to the ROC actions in the area of Marvila and Beato. And he will also present the topic of this seminar, so sustainability in the context of cultural heritage-led regeneration and its opportunities and challenges in cities. So we'll now play the video.
The Institute of Social Sciences is one of the academic partners of the ROC project. Our commitment towards cultural heritage-led regeneration is built on a high-profile action research agenda developed in partnership with City Council, local stakeholders, and residents in the demonstration area in Lisbon. Before I present in detail our work and then dive into the main theme of this panel, I would like to take advantage to thank the excellent research done by the team at our hosting institution. If you want to find more information about the team, please go to our local website, lisboarocproject.eu. In Lisbon, three major initiatives have been co-designed and implemented in the demonstration area on the eastern side of the city, in the neighborhoods of Marvila and Beato. The pop-up based on the reuse of empty stores, the creation of the edible garden named Garden for All, and the new interpretive center of Beato and Marvila within the municipal library. Along with the co-design and implementation of these initiatives, the project has promoted a wider range of activities and events, aiming at gathering multiple voices around the optimization of the tangible and intangible heritage in the urban area, and then promote its regeneration triggered by the improvement of both built environment and social empowerment and inclusion. Our approach to this complex set of interlocked issues and goals has converged over the triangulation of qualitative and quantitative methods in our action research, mainly participatory observation, interviews with key actors, and surveys. I will give the stage to the local stakeholders in a later moment, as they will introduce their work and discuss their engagement with the project by providing all needed information about the initiatives. Before that, I would like to spend some minutes to cast light over the leading theme of this panel, sustainability and cultural heritage. The concept of sustainability is a broad one and has been advocated by activists, policymakers, and researchers for decades. So many voices claiming the same thing can be both an advantage and a disadvantage. On the one hand, it means that we are becoming more and more aware of the need to turn sustainable our lifestyle. On the other, however, it becomes more and more difficult to find a common definition of what sustainability is. There are multiple definitions of this concept that share a common concern over the present use of natural resources and ecosystem services in view of our future. While it generally complies economic, environmental, and social aspects, the concept is more and more used in tandem to the concept of development. So, sustainable development helps clarify that we need to meet basic needs of people today without compromising future generations. In 1987, the Brundtland report in the paper Our Common Future defined the sustainable development as the combination of the environment and human emotion or action. The development shifts from merely political and economic embedded progress to understand what we all do in attempting to improve our lot within that abode. Development, therefore, concerns the amelioration of our common situation, not only that of poor countries. Essential needs and limitations are key, and economic growth can facilitate their fulfillment, while equity is encouraged by citizen participation. In 1992, the Rio Conference reinforced the call for citizen participation as an essential component to achieving sustainable goals. To this end, local agendas 21st were promoted in cities all over the world with a push on citizen engagement for urban green infrastructures. More recently, the United Nations have defined 17 goals for the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. The sustainable goals are defined by the UN as the blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future with a focus on challenges like poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, peace, and justice. Against this backdrop, cities and processes of urbanization have been long considered as the main hurdle for sustainability. Yet, the high concentration of opportunities to share knowledge and steer change has shed light on urban governments as possible drivers of sustainable development. This is illustrated, for example, by the inclusion of a specific urban goal in the 17 Sustainable Goals, which addresses challenges of overpopulation, housing, slum upgrading, as well as targets related to climate resiliency, waste management, public space, mobility systems, and participatory planning. In 2016, the EU issued the Urban Agenda for the EU, and in 2017, the UN reinforced this call through the new Urban Agenda after the Habitat 3 conference in Quito, Ecuador. So, as local governments become protagonists in global negotiations, anthropogenic climate change and unsustainable development patterns still require a multi-level strategy to be effectively tackled. These needs are being received by the European Union, and the shaping for a new European Green Deal seems to go in this direction. If cities are encouraged to take the lead on sustainable development, urban sustainability is yet a contested concept, in that the trade-offs of environmental, economic, and social sustainability are often sidelined, along with emerging global extreme events and risks. As a result, we still find it hard to define what is to be sustained, by whom, and for whom. In this panel, we will focus on three main aspects of the sustainability: the environmental, the social, and the cultural. This choice was based on the acknowledgement that the ROC project in Lisbon took advantage of the international debate on these aspects, aiming to find a specific local convergence in the demonstration area. Let me spend a couple of minutes to provide our vision on each one of them. When we talk about social sustainability, we are focusing on the need for sustainable communities. The quality of life depends on the eradication of poverty, and social inclusion and citizen participation can become paramount through informal and formal processes, structures, infrastructures, and systems. Social sustainability entails, therefore, equal rights in the multiple fields of social life, from labor and justice to well-being, by ensuring that the impact of current choices cover social rights in the present and for the future. Environmental sustainability highlights the mitigation of environmental hazards. The match with human needs is anything but easy, and most of the contributions made by scholars, practitioners, and policymakers account for the difficulties arising in this realm. Like social sustainability, the choices we make in the present should not compromise the future of our planet and future generations, as especially regards the access to natural resources. Last, about cultural sustainability, this is often included in the realm of social sustainability, concerns the preservation of and promotion of cultural beliefs, practices, and the conservation of tangible and intangible heritage as a fundamental piece of the future. Cultural sustainability, therefore, strictly depends on the sharing of knowledge to make culture a key factor of sustainable development and create a new global asset to fight inequality and promote inclusive cities where all people can participate in cultural life and gain equal access to culture. Related to cultural sustainability, the launch of the European Year of Cultural Heritage in 2018 has played a key role. The search for a stronger sense of belonging to a common European space aimed to link past and future through the active engagement of people, especially young people. The ROC project embraced this vision, as cultural heritage allows catalyzing issues of identity and distinctiveness, while creating favorable conditions to engage with place-based initiatives. But now the question is whether we have pursued principles of social, environmental, and cultural sustainability in the regeneration of the tangible and intangible cultural heritage in Lisbon, and what can be done in the future. In our local website, lisboarocproject.eu, you can find scientific and policy-oriented outputs produced by the research team and our collaborators, visitants, and students. All documents are in free access, and you're very welcome to download and share knowledge produced under this project. From our action research, we can draw some insights that can be of help to better frame ongoing challenges and raising opportunities for each one of the three aspects. About social sustainability, we believe that social inclusion and participation rely upon goals of improving community life and neighborhoods. However, we have to be clear about what a community is, whether it is defined by social features or territorial boundaries. We face this challenge by finding that the demonstration area in Lisbon is anything but homogeneous when we look at the existing inequalities and their distribution. About environmental sustainability, we think that limiting environmental hazards means promoting awareness about natural resources and their preservation. Extreme events and global risks show the need for clear predictors and a qualitative appraisal of how communities can access data and knowledge to effectively adapt to climate change. In the demonstration area, this aspect raises questions about the pursuit of environmental justice and the use of the soil. About cultural sustainability, the improvement of access to cultural sites and practices implicates the acknowledgement of the role played by culture for societies and communities. Cultural heritage helps cast light on the role of memory as a driver for future change. In the demonstration area, we found a huge potential in the regeneration of both tangible and intangible cultural heritage and the need to share local memories about a place in a tremendous transformation. Before I give the stage to our local stakeholders, I would like to hear from our provocateur, her take on sustainability and cultural heritage. Later, we will learn about 3 examples of the ways in which sustainability can be achieved in the cities of Turin, Liverpool, and Vilnius. These examples are shared by our ROC model cities to which Lisbon has looked at in this project in order to learn needed lessons to improve its performance and outcomes in this field. That said, I would like to ask Mafalda Nunes to be with me in the moderation of this panel and the facilitation of the open discussion that we would like to have with you all participants to this conference during the Q&A. So we, the research team, and also the local stakeholders in Lisbon are very keen to answer to all of your questions. Thank you very much.
So I would like to remind you that on your left side you have the Q&A icon where you can add your questions. So even for the video presentations, the presenters or the speakers are online with us today here, and they will be available to answer your questions in the end of this session. So now I would like to give the stage to our provocateur today, Raffaella Gueze. So Raffaella has a background on environmental engineering and an executive master on business innovation and design. And she works for the environment and green sector of the municipality of Bologna, where she coordinates different sustainability projects of both local and European scale. She's specialized in participatory processes and in innovative sustainable projects, and she's the technical referent for the environmental annual budget in the city of Bologna. In the ROC project, she was responsible for the sustainable pilot projects in Bologna. And for this seminar, she will reflect on how the action research approach developed in ROC and how it could be replicated and upscaled in a city context. So I would like to call to the stage Raffaella Gueze.
Thank you, Mafalda, and thank you, Roberto. I'm, as you listen, I manage the environmental sustainability pilot project, but in this seminar, I will be the provocateur. So I will not show our Bologna case study, but I would like just to list it because we have tested 6 different pilot projects, but with one main task, that is to reduce the climate change impact and reduce the CO2 emission. Also comes from the cultural sector. So we tested the first one was about the greening of unconventional spaces named U-Garden, and is a pocket garden on the terrace of Opera House of Bologna. The second one was about the circular economy. We had a workshop with the university to reuse cultural advertising banner and create merchandising. The third was about the life cycle assessment on the Opera Barbiere di Siviglia. That is the first step for sustainability action plan of the theatre. The fourth was about civil crowdfunding and citizen participation for the urban greening. The 15th was the sustainable events criteria in the call for tender in our summer festival. And first of all, and the final, public and private partnership for the greening of urban space like Piazza Rossini. In all of these pilot projects, we use design thinking approach and research, action, research, ROC methodology. And now the challenge for Bologna is to create a city network with all these best practice. And please, if you are interested, you can find it on ROC website. But in my today's role, I would like, before you listen the showcase and the best practice of the speaker, I would like to ask auditor some question in advance and to reflect on it. Because how could the best practice be replicated in your city context? Because it's important to disseminate best practice and to replicate it in the different contexts in Europe. And to speakers, how could you improve your practice after the end of ROC project in the next year? Because in our experience, at the end of a project, it's very important to support best practice and create a stable, sustainable system. So I will stay with you in Q&A, and I think that you can enjoy the section. Thank you so much, and I will give the floor to Mafalda. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Raffaella, for your interesting insights. So now I would like to give the stage to Chiara Lucchini from Torino Urban Lab. Turin was one of the role model cities in the ROC project. And Chiara will present how mapping and use underused spaces can be useful in the light of the common good regulation, and she will highlight possible new uses of spaces and places for development of local communities. So I would like to call Chiara to the stage.
Good morning, Mafalda. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for this great opportunity to share the experience we brought about with Torino, well, with the rock project in Torino. Actually, already the introduction of Mafalda's and of Raffaella's were highlighting some of the core concepts that we also worked on during our experience in Torino, and I hope that we will have the chance to further discuss it along the morning. So actually, the experience that Torino was bringing about inside the framework of the rock project was closely connected to a number of core concepts that I will briefly summarize just to give you, let's say, the main framework we were trying to move inside. So we have been working on the relationship between tangible and intangible cultural heritage, and the relationship that can be established by the physical environment and the more intangible, let's say, phenomena of production of culture, production of shared values, production of, let's say, innovative ways to mobilize local actors. But on the other side, we wanted to understand, or better understand, how to mobilize vacant built heritage in the city. And to do so, actually, Raffaella was mentioning pilots. So we were delivering these initiatives by building from existing pilots. The city of Torino has been experimenting quite a lot during the last years on a number of policies that had to do with this general framework. So the city has been working on the commons regulation. The city has already been working on how to, let's say, reactivate some vacant properties. And so we wanted in some way to expand this existing knowledge on how to tune the physical dimension of the city and the capacity of local communities to produce social value. So the initiative is actually about surveying the municipality-owned properties in the city, and we did that with the support, with the important support of Future Urban Legacy Lab, which is a research center into our Politecnico, the Technical University in Torino. And jointly with them, we were collecting information about actually how the public property is done in the city, and we were exploring that through mapping, through georeferencing information, through this idea, this general idea of assessing how the property is distributed in space, but also which kind of typologies of properties the city is owning, and which kind of this, let's say, general amount of property can be more interesting or more useful in order to, let's say, enhance more possibilities at local time for starting new urban regeneration processes. So I brought some images for you where the research is quite a thick one, I would say, but we have been continuously working in close contact with the lab that supported us. On the one side, on the assessment of property. The physiognomy of public properties in the city is quite a complex thing, and each city has got specificities from this point of view. So we have been, let's say, browsing the property and understanding, as I mentioned, which were the categories that were interesting for us. And then we finally concentrated on ground floors, especially those units, those properties that could host commercial and what in Torino is called institutional use, which means any property that can be used by third sectors, so by associations, by activities that might need a window on the street. And we also focused on those ground floor properties which might have potential relationship with other properties in the other floors. In order to imagine possible connections and possible relationships between different kind of properties. The other thing that was guiding our analysis was the potential relationship of these units with close by public spaces, because we know that urban regeneration is also something that has close relationships with the way we use public spaces in the city. In this other image, I was just bringing some diagrams just to let you understand how the research was delivered. You can see some of the analysis that we did concerning the property in order to understand it better. And as you can see, there are some, let's say, prevalent typologies, prevalent functions that are represented in these charts. Actually, the majority of the properties owned by the city of Torino have a residential use, but we decided to then focus on the other properties that were in some way more matching much more the let's say the identity, the typology of properties that we were interested in, that I was describing you a few minutes ago. Actually, through our analysis, we discovered that there are some areas in the city in which there is a higher concentration of public property positioned in the ground floors, so which potentially can be freely usable. And in order to assess the level of vacancy of these units, we crossed the information coming from the city of Torino with the information provided by our Chamber of Commerce in order to understand whether these units were occupied or not by commercial activities. And in the case of a negative answer, so no, it is not occupied by anything, in order to understand the duration of this vacancy, in order to understand, let's say, how long the property has been underused for a variety of reasons, which are mainly, let's say, bound to economic reasons, to the let's say, the low interest by the market towards this kind of spaces. What came out was in the three areas that we highlighted, and as you could see from the last image, two are in the north of the city, one is in the very south of the city, and it is this one that I'm showing you now. So we were assessing the position of these units, and we were assessing the length of the vacancy. Well, what we discovered through, through this work of analysis, we discovered a number of things concerning the property in Torino. First of all, of course, that the physiognomy of property is very complex. So it is difficult to simply say, okay, we want to use vacant property owned by the city to start any kind of policy. This means that we need a much deeper knowledge about how the property is done. We have plots, we have single units, we have systems of units, we have units positioned in different floors of the buildings. So we need to know more about the property in order to be capable to exploit it, let's say. But we also understood that at these stages, especially in the city of Torino, free market is no solution. I mean, we often say, or in the public debate, it is often said that publicly owned properties can be used to, let's say, achieve a different balance in city budgeting. This is partially true. This might be true for specific properties, but generally speaking, for the kind of properties that we investigated, this is not true. So simply thinking of positioning a unit on the market, selling it on the market, or renting it on the market might not be the solution. So new kind of actions have to be done in order to reactivate this kind of properties. But we also discovered that mapping can be an extremely valuable tool if used to, let's say, start or establish a confrontation, a debate, a conversation with local actors, because this is showing things, let's say, in the real world. So this is letting us understand things precisely where they are positioned. And the images I was bringing you from Mirafiori Sud in the last slide are showing a specific building with specific characters and with specific units that are currently empty. But mapping can also be a policy-making tool, which is what we wanted to, let's say, explore or to double-check through our research. So the idea was precisely going in the direction of the provocation that Raffaella was doing just a couple of minutes ago. How can pilots become the norm? How can we upscale pilots? And how can we transform pilots in policy-making tools? So what we were trying to do through this experience, which is, of course, a starting point and not an ending point, is to understand which is the knowledge we need in order to make the activation of public property with the purpose of starting new urban regeneration activities, how to make this become the norm, how to make this become a new regulation in the city that is allowing for new things to emerge. So I'm at your complete disposal for any further question concerning the research. I know that this was quite a brief presentation. There is a lot that we might say about that, but I also would like to leave the stage to the people that is sharing this super interesting session with me. So thanks a lot for following me, and well, I'm here for any question. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Chiara, for the very interesting presentation. I noticed that there are already some questions on the chat. I remind you that we also have a Q&A icon on your left side, where you can also write your questions there. And we'll make sure to answer all of them in the end of the session in the Q&A part. So now, after hearing from Turin, that was one of the 7 role model cities in ROC, we'll hear the experiences of 3 different initiatives that were developed in Lisbon, that is one of ROC replicator cities. So the video will start with the presentation from Alexandra Aníbal from the Municipality of Lisbon, and she will tell us about the participatory process that was behind the creation of the interpretative center of Marvila and Beato. After that, we have a presentation from the local association Regeneration that is specialized in the regeneration of public spaces through participatory processes, and they have been working for a while in Marvila, a neighborhood in Lisbon where ROC was implementing his actions. And they will tell us about some of the challenges and the achievements also in relation to public spaces regeneration. And after that, we'll hear about a garden project that was developed also in the area of Marvila by Adriana Freire, and she is responsible for a community kitchen project in Lisbon called Cozinha Popular da Mouraria, and for a fruit gardening initiative called Muita Fruta, and together with the Portuguese art and architecture collective called Warehouse, they were developing a garden pilot project to be implemented in Marvila. And she will tell us a bit more about that in this video presentation. All of them that are participating in this video are here with us online today, so feel free to add your questions on the chat or the Q&A, and we'll be able to answer them in the end in the Q&A. So thank you.
I'm Alexandra Aníbal from the Municipality of Lisbon. In the Lisbon ROC project, I have the responsibility of creating the Marvila and Beato Interpretive Center, that is the central project of ROC in Lisbon. Through a participatory approach in which the local community was called to intervene actively, this center is being created at Marvila's library, aiming to gather knowledge about the tangible and intangible cultural heritage and intangible cultural heritage of this territory, making it available to the public in an appealing, playful, and innovative way. The creation of this center is based on a social museology perspective, a small-scale museology, but of social, cultural, and economic impact, which focuses its action on the development of the person through the identification, study, and dynamization of the cultural heritage elements of a particular community through the use of participatory methods. We defend the principle of participation in cultural heritage projects, the right of every human being to intervene in the process of identification, construction, and definition of the concepts, dimensions, and meanings of the historical and cultural reality of a given collective through the museum and with a view to local development. For this purpose, our methodology is the participative methodology in which experts and communities are at the same level to decide the methods, principles, and objectives of each phase of the inventory process, and in which the new knowledge produced throughout the process will be assumed as a co-production and a co-authorship. How did we do that in the creation of the Marvila and Beato Interpretive Center? We have constituted an organizing committee with local residents, representatives of local institutions and of the two civil parishes, Lisbon municipality workers, sociologists and historians, and ICS researchers, all of them at the same level. And we have done several meetings, twice a month. We have divided the territory into areas and the organizing committee into groups. Each group has mapped the cultural heritage elements of each area, tangible and intangible cultural heritage, as well as cultural heritage that no longer exists, but that is present in people's memories. Each group have gathered information about each of the cultural heritage elements of each area, documents, photos, movies, videos, and identification of witnesses who have experienced situations and who have stories to tell. We have created a database with all of this information, and we have done exploratory interviews with witnesses that have been found out by each OC group. And after this exploratory phase, we have now the technical support of the Municipal Video Library. With them, we have interviewed 58 people and we have edited 220 small videos, each one about a life experience concerning one cultural heritage element. All the recollected data, textual, visual, and audiovisual, is being organized in the interactive multimedia equipment that is going to be installed in the Marvila's library. Also, we are going to have a researchable database of all these testimonials in the Lisbon Rock site. We are also working in the publication of a booklet explaining the Lisbon Participative Inventory and containing the testimony of all those involved in this process. This booklet is going to be offered at the launch of the Interpretive Center. So, the Marvila and Beato Interpretive Center will be set up in the Marvila Public Library in a sustainable way, becoming one of its public services and making information about this territory available to the general public in an appealing, recreational, and innovative way. We think it will reinforce the library's role of cultural and community hub. It will also aggregate the knowledge that was dispersed among the various entities and institutions operating in the field. This center will bring citizens together, strengthen people's sense of identity with the territory. It will encourage conversations about the territory, will inspire reflections on memory, identity, and ongoing urban transformations. Also, the participative inventory methodology that we have described in several situations and supports can be replicated in other territories, cities, and countries. Thank you.
Res do Chão, directly translated as Ground Floor, is a non-profit NGO that was created in 2013 with the main goal of promoting urban regeneration projects that cause positive social impact. We develop rehabilitation, dynamization, and activation projects focusing on public spaces using participatory methodologies. In 2017, we started developing projects in the parish of Marvila, mainly in the neighborhoods of Alfinetes, Salgadas, and
and containing
arrived at the present 4,000 people. Profit NGO that was created in 2013 with the main goal of promoting urban regeneration projects that cause positive social impact. We develop rehabilitation, dynamization, and activation projects focusing on public spaces using participatory methodologies. In 2017, we started developing projects in the parish of Marvila, mainly in the neighborhoods of Alfinetes, Salgadas, and Marques de Abrantes. Beginning with the spatial and social diagnosis of these areas, we are currently developing participatory projects that aim at the qualification of public spaces. Working actively as members of the local community group, we've contributed to the growth of the number of residents attending the group's meetings, defining the priority issues for these municipal housing neighborhoods. To contextualize these places, we will give you some of the results of our diagnosis. Construction started in the 70s, but the bulk of the buildings were built in the late 90s when the population arrived at the present 4,000 people, most of them relocated from other places in Lisbon. In 2018, these neighborhoods had around 54 non-residential ground floors. From this pool, 20 were vacant and 34 had businesses or some other type of occupation. Looking at the ones that were occupied, the most common uses are coffee shops or working spaces for non-profits. Some of them are both, actually. We admit that some inaccuracies might exist in our diagnosis, given that it wasn't easy to get concludent information from the municipality, the landlord in this case. From the information that we managed to gather, during the last few years, Marvila's parish and institutions were able to make formal individual requests to occupy these spaces, but an official open call hasn't existed for years, and you can't find any opportunity on the private market to rent these places. As a result, no new businesses opened for years. During and after the diagnosis phase, important questions emerged. What's the importance of ground floors for the neighborhood ecosystem, and how does that relate with the quality of the immediate public spaces? Is the number of commercial spaces available enough for the density of residents? Is the location, access, and the accessibility of these non-commercial ground floors adequate? What's the condition and assets that these spaces have? Do the existing businesses and services respond to the first-order needs of the residents? How do you establish fair criteria to the attribution and renting of these existing spaces? Looking at these questions as a starting point, we propose to occupy a vacant ground floor as a pop-up project in October of 2018. Lasting 10 days, we implemented different types of uses. Workshops, a community group meeting, work sessions that contributed to an edible garden project, and a bicycle repair shop. We also organized focal groups with residents, businesses, NGO representatives, potential renters, and municipal technicians working on all the questions that emerged from the diagnosis. After the pop-up project and in response to a request made by us in 2018, the municipality decided to assign the space to Res do Chão as a headquarters to promote public spaces participatory projects. As members of the community group, we decided to share this workspace with the group, promoting resident-led projects for the neighborhood. Last July, the residents applied one of the ideas to the parish's participatory budgeting, which consisted on the transformation of part of the space to give support for pandemic-related issues for all the nations. Learned that 9 of the vacant ground floors was scheduled to be assigned to cultural and sports groups, letting aside commercial uses, fact that reheated the discussion and reflection about these ground floors and their uses. In February, a resident representative of the community group formally presented to the municipality the concerns of the group regarding the low number of businesses in the area and the necessity of opening an official call inserted in a local development plan that matches the needs identified by the residents and the available spaces. As a result of these efforts, the municipality committed to opening the call for businesses during 2020, making available 4 vacant commercial spaces. Working since 2017 in Marvila, having established a solid network of public and private local partners since the beginning, it is difficult to pinpoint the direct effects of the pop-up occupation on recent developments. It seems to us that the work that all the partners have been doing together promoted more citizens to get involved in these issues, and that the transformation of these places is starting to have actual results. The example being the formal call for the occupation of 4 spaces by new business.
I'm in Marvila on my way to a secret place that I want to show you. My name is Adriana and I'm the mentor of Cozinha Popular da Mouraria, a community kitchen based in the historic center of Lisbon. A kitchen where we produce quality, socially equitable and inclusive food, bringing people together at the same table. We also work with edible landscaping and all forms of urban farming to bring cuisine closer to local food production, trying to improve more quality of life in the city. That's why we have been invited by the municipality to collaborate with ROC in this pilot project that we decided to call A Garden for Everyone, Jardim para Todos. In the heart of Marvila, in a place that belongs to the municipality, we want to build a green public space to the territory and at the same time create a place for interaction in a participatory dynamic.
Bem-vindos no jardim.
And to design the garden, we have Lucia, a Swiss-Italian architect who works in public spaces and landscaping. She is passionate about interventions in abandoned spaces and loves to cook with wide plants. And we also invited the Collective Warehouse to design and build with the community the equipment for the garden using recycled materials. Here we want to provide a productive and beautiful space for the community to live together, with an outdoor kitchen and a oven, where people can cultivate a relationship with the land, connect to healthy products, and cook healthy and tasty dishes. This is a leisure space for collaboration, interaction and meeting. Here we can sit, walk, read, play, exercise or just contemplate. This is a space where we can learn, planting with families and children, observing diversity, exchanging seeds, cooking and eating together, or participating in a workshop, sharing a meal, or talking while making bread. Edible gardens, like other green spaces, offer many benefits in ecological, economic, social, and cultural terms. And that's why edible landscapes must be included as sustainable components of urban planning. And while knowing that this is a small place, it can be a good example of how the creation of alternative areas in the city for the production of food is so important for the future. The great challenge of this pilot project is to manage participation between the municipality of Lisbon, the inhabitants of Marvila, and local actors, and thus build a model that can be replicated in other neighborhoods.
Okay. Tell what you want to say. I want to stay here forever.
So now I would like to call to the stage all the different speakers in this seminar. So Roberto Falanga from the University of Lisbon, Raffaella Gueze from the Municipality of Bologna, Alexandra Aníbal from the Municipality of Lisbon, Chiara Lucchini from Torino Urban Lab, Luís Matos from the Chão Association, and Adriana Freire from the project Garden for All. And we have about 20 minutes for the Q&A. I see that we have already some questions here on the chat. So I think the first one is from Giovan Battista Cavadini. And he says, hi, everyone. To implement sustainable solutions in historic districts, it is more relevant to focus on new technical solutions and models, or to remove the existing economic and regulatory barriers. Can both objectives of sustainability and cultural heritage be met, or one of the two should be sacrificed? It's an interesting question. So if one of the speakers would like to answer, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself.
Hi.
No
Hi,
problem.
everybody. Hi. Yeah, I don't know if I can say something on that. Maybe also Chiara from the experience of Turin, but let me say something as a researcher. I find this question very interesting, and actually it was one of the main topics, let's say controversial topics, that we wanted to address with this research, because in the case of Lisbon, the area of Marvila and Beato is actually, I mean, it's a very, it's an area that is not an homogeneous one. And we found out that within the area, we actually see different ways of different degrees of socioeconomic problems, but also opportunities. And so I would say that the first step is always to have a clear notion of which are the main hurdle of an urban area where we want to intervene through, for example, a cultural heritage-led regeneration scheme, or a regeneration scheme more in general. Because my fear as a researcher is always to, you know, to address things as if they were something else. And sometimes we find out that they are something that is very different from our initial assumptions. And in the case of Marvila, this happened actually, because we found that in the riverside, the kind of problems were not the same of the problems that we that we actually found in the inner side of Marvilla. And with the rock project, what we did, and with the partnership of the Municipality of Lisbon, was to concentrate our work in the inner side, because we understood that that was the part of this urban area that was most in need of new ways of urban regeneration. Now, just 1 minute to say something about the technological part and how this can fit with, let's say, the general scheme of regeneration. I have something to say about that, but it's much more related to the sustainable agenda, which is the role of digital innovation in urban sustainability, which is, again, from a research point of view, not that clear. Let me say something, for example, about the risks, the extreme events and risks at the global level that we are facing, and actually the pandemic is, unfortunately, a good example of that. And there is a report from the World Economic Forum that says that while we are trying to pursue a new sustainable equilibrium at the global level, we should be able also to consider that the advancement of the digital innovation will require more and more energy, for example, which is not necessarily embedded into the sustainable idea of the forthcoming world. What do I want to say with that? That also in the case of regeneration, if we want to implement regenerative schemes that include the digital component in the intervention, we should be able to say whether these digital innovations actually help or hinder the reach of sustainable goals mostly in deprived areas of the city. Yeah, Chiara, please.
So as you were calling me into the conversation, then here I am. So I think that the question by Giovan Battista is kind of tricky, because we shouldn't be choosing between one of the two, but we should bring the two things forward together. But I mean, you ask, you talk about removing existing economic and regulatory barriers. As for the regulatory barriers, of course, a lot can be done, because it's us who establish our own rules. But sometimes when it comes to economic conditions, then you cannot really act upon things that really are above of your head. So you just have to adjust the situation and the reality you live in order to respond or to adapt to specific conditions or problems or issues. So from this point of view, I think that the answer is in the way you establish the relationship between the cultural heritage and the sustainability issues. So we were discovering it a little bit, or studying this issue a little bit in Torino with our mapping experience, because we understood that in some parts of the city, the properties that are owned by the city have no market. What does that mean? That we cannot give an economic answer to that specific condition of vacancy, because the economic answer has been proved as a failing answer. So from that point of view, the model that has to be in some way reframed or reorganized or reinvented has to change, I think, the order of things, of elements. So if the economic answer is not working, then we have to focus on different kind of values, which are social values, which are shared values, which are values that have to do with the way the local community can see or take advantage of those spaces to do something that apparently, and I'm underlining the word apparently, has no economic value. Because the reuse or reactivation of spaces through functions or people, communities that want to take care of them with no initial economic, let's say, purpose or idea. I mean, the profit is not the main focus. The community is the main focus. Shared services are the main focus. Then many scholars tell us that in the end, changing the starting point is even generating economic outcomes, positive economic outcomes, helping tackling those big issues that stand above our heads and we cannot really confront with because we have no tools for that. A municipality cannot really react to, I don't know, the effects of a global crisis, a global economic crisis. This is just an example, but just to let you understand that probably the scales are different and we have to find an appropriate answer that is consistent with the scale we are working at.
Thank you very much, Roberto and Chiara. So now we have, it's not a question, it's a comment here by Luigi Perici, but I think it goes in line with the work that is being developed by Chão in Marvila. So Luigi says that housing is again in vogue more than commercial, and special solutions should be found to target specific groups of users, like elderly people, students, low income and young families, providing housing with the necessary technologies to make them sustainable and in line with the new demands of health, working and life. Maybe, Luís, you could tell us a bit about the work that you've been developing in Marvila and how you also address some of these concerns in the work that Chão is now developing in Marvila. Would you like to say something about this?
Okay, hi. Just to clarify, the question was about housing, because you broke up a bit.
Yeah. Okay. So he says that housing is more in vogue than commercial. So in your approach to public spaces regeneration, with a focus also on ground floors, etc., maybe it would be interesting to hear a bit about how Chão is.
Of course.
Yeah.
So it relates to the work that we do there, and in a couple of different ways. The original concept of Chão was actually nothing truly original. We just took the idea of the city of high level by working in public spaces and working with our eyes focusing also on ground floors, and especially non-residential ground floors as a continuity of public spaces, and thinking about the relationship between these two segments of high level. And we assume that by working on that level, the upper floors would be impacted by the work that we did in the public spaces and on the ground floors. So if you regenerate these, the upper levels will be impacted positively or negatively, depending on your success by this. So we are doing the same in Marvila. And we are doing these there because, number one, we don't have an opportunity to have any kind of direct actuation on housing, because it's municipal housing. And so we have a municipal company that runs all the housing that has a lot of problems. But what we are focusing on is on the most immediate spaces next to the house, and working through that to build a different relationship with spaces, with the ground floor, and trying to impact the upper levels like that. Having said that, of course, that if we can solve the problems of the vacancy of ground floors, we do have an impact on housing. And if we promote better public spaces next to the house, and having in context different kinds of uses, different kinds of people, different kinds of needs, we are maybe not solving problems of housing, but we are having an impact on the lives of people and opening space for the housing problems to arise from these public processes that we do. And so by trying to get through these public participatory processes, by trying to get everyone involved, if the residents and for example, the municipal the municipal company that manages the buildings into that process too, we start to open space to try and better the conditions of housing. But it's, as far as housing goes, is a long stretch, of course, but it does open the field.
Thank you very much, Luís. I think we have time for one more question and then we have to close. We have a question here by Jessica Verhage. So it's a question for everyone. So she says, based on your local initiatives, what were the main lessons learned regarding the role of public participation in urban regeneration? Has your understanding of public participation developed or changed due to the ROC project? Does someone wants to answer?
I can answer.
Thank you, Alexandra.
The interpretive center, since its beginning in the Lisbon Living Lab in Marvilla's library, we had the objective of doing a participatory process, and this went very with every step on the way, with the people, with the residents, the local institutions of Marvilla and Beato, the associations, and I have explained in the video that you have passed here. It was really a very interesting process, because it's not an easy one, because the participatory process are difficult. Because everyone has an opinion, and it's we spend lots of time with people, because they discuss, they have ideas. It's not easy, and Chão knows it very well, but it makes all the difference, because people feel the things we are conquering with this interpretive center as their own, and this makes all the difference in cultural heritage, because they have a sense of community, of identity, that is reinforced with this kind of project, because they are the ones who with the historians and the sociologists, it's an ecology of knowledge. It's the knowledge of the residents and the knowledge of the scholars, because the university was with us doing this. I already knew that participatory projects were important. Now I know they are difficult, but they are the best we can do in cultural heritage.
If I can,
thank you, Alexandra. Yes, Raffaella. Yeah.
If I can add some information about the experience of Bologna, as I said, we used the design thinking process And we used to have a participatory process to co-design, to co-project, and our pilot project. But we had, it was very important to have a temporary project, a prototype of the project, like, for example, our pocket garden in the Opera House Theatre, that was very difficult to have because the normative was very interesting project, but we had a temporary project. We tested during 1 year, and after we transform the project, because we understand the weakness and the part of the project that we have to change to better use the spaces. So the participatory, not all also only about citizen or student, but about the different stakeholders are very important.
Thank you very much, Raffaella. So I haven't noticed before, but we have here a question in the Q&A section from Pablo Costa, and he asks, what are the biggest challenges or difficulties about public participation, and what the main difficulties to implement a temporary project? And maybe, I don't know if Adriana wants to say something about this, but I think she might have something to say about this particular question. Adriana?
Hi. I think, temporary projects and a project, when you plant, you need more time. It cannot be so temporary. So we are organizing everything with the community and with the municipality to continue this project. Because and this is the idea of this pilot project, is exactly how we can work together in time, not only for a while, but create roots like a plant and keeping working as a community, as we could do in a spontaneous, for example, community garden. But here we have Cozinha Popular da Mouraria to maintain the contact with the community, and it's very interesting that we find a lot of people doing incredible things, and we are very excited with the idea of putting together the 2 or 3 Marvillas in that small area. I don't know if I answer it, but maybe not.
I think you have. I don't know if someone wants to add. We don't have much time left, but if one of the other speakers wants to add something about this question, if not, we'll have to close soon. Chiara, yes.
It's gonna be super quick, but seeing the question from the perspective of Torino, which was not experimenting like Bologna was doing during the rock project, our perception is that if you wanna really concretely activate the local communities in the process of transforming the city, there should be a very clear and wide disposability by the public actor to, let's say, enlarge the stage, to give some power to the local communities in order to be really participating to that, and not just being the final step in which we say, okay, we wanted to do that, and then what you think of it. What the Bologna's experience, but also the experience that was clearly explained today by Lisboa, is the fact that the process is open since from the very beginning, which might be frightful for political representatives, because this means that you decide that a part of your power is devolved to someone else, which is also a very brave attitude from a political perspective. But it can be difficult to handle, or you have to change again the frames and the categories through which you look at reality if you want this to happen for real. Otherwise, it's simply asking people, what do you think of it? And then maybe wondering why they are not agreeing with you, which is not the point, I would say.
May I just add one thing, Mafalda? Which
Very
is,
quick, please, because we have to.
I completely agree with Chiara, and I think that one thing that often fails is how do you prepare that process? How do you manage to get information to people so that they can have an informed opinion on things, and not only a hunch or a one thing, that it's based on, not on knowledge. And that part often misses completely the point. And I think that it throws a lot of problems into the process. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So we have to close now. I would like to thank all the speakers for your very, very interesting presentations and insights. And I would like to thank also our audience for your active participation and very interesting inputs in our chat. And I would like to invite you to stay with us. So after this seminar that is finishing now, there is another seminar starting on cultural heritage and innovative partnerships. And it will be very interesting. It will offer insights on the ROC project in the domain of co-creation and facilitation and recognition of innovative partnerships. So I invite you to stay with us for that. And if you haven't done so, I would also highly recommend you to visit the ROC online exhibition that is ongoing in the conference platform, and where you can visit virtual booths with where ROC partners present their technological innovations, and you can also have more information about other EU projects that are working on cultural heritage and urban regeneration. So thank you all for your participation, and goodbye.